I've been single for a while, and I was sick and tired of it. Being 32 and single is no laughing matter. The traumatic experience of watching your friends get married, have children, and attain the American dream of akin to the hopeless depression of a schizophrenic mental patient. I wanted a husband. I wanted kids. I wanted a steady job. I was tired of working at Burger King and living alone in a studio apartment. So I decided to go out to one of those speed dating events. I picked up my best clothes and walked out the door. Keep in mind, I work at Burger King, so the best clothes I could afford was some weird dress shirts and khaki pants. I bought them at Walmart during a clearance event. I walked into the event, trying to display the shredded confidence I had left, but I was instantly discouraged when I saw all the other competing females and their fine dresses. Most were low-cut, and they all smelled like flower gardens designed by Martha Stewart herself. The men there were dressed in army man suits, and had high-class whiskey in hand, and auras reeked of nothing but pure self-esteem. The speed dating started. The first man I sat down with was quite young, a 22-year-old father of 3. He had made a lot of mistakes in his life, and seen for more than I could handle. Right off the bat, he told me that he was 4 days sober, and was looking to settle down with a nice woman who didn't look like a walrus. I spent the next 4 minutes of making general small talk, quite literally fearing for my life. Once the buzzer sounded, I rocketed out of my chair at the speed of a gazelle. The young man seemed offended, but, honestly, what did you expect? The next man seemed much more appealing. He was 26 and studying to be a nurse at a local hospital. He loved kids, but had none of his own, which was a relief to me. He seemed well-kept and stable. He wasn't a bad looker either. I asked him if he liked my number as the session ended, and he consented. I flipped open my phone and entered his number as he read it out loud. Smiling at him, and thanking him for his listening ear, I got up to the next table. While doing so, I closed my phone by accident and realized that I had never saved his number, so it was lost forever. For the love of 0 out of 3. The next table was empty. What a joke. If I wanted to sit and stare at a wall, I would have stayed home. Nothing really to say here. Moving on. This is where the story begins getting dark. The man I met at the next table was the most interesting of all, but not in the bad way. He had flowing dark hair and green eyes. He had this cute smile and wore a black suit, black shoes, black everything. For someone dressed in such a gothic manner, he had such a bubbly personality. Everything I said to him made him chuckle. I felt like a queen talking to this boy. He was 27 and currently unemployed. He was married to a wife before, but she had left after their 2 kids died of leukemia. He told me that the cancer was entwined with his heritage, dating back as far as the 18th century. Therefore, in numerous fits of emotional rage, his ex-wife blamed him for giving their children cancer and left. Too pained by the loss of his entire family, he moved to the city a few weeks ago and was living on unemployment, unable to continue working at his job due to crippling depression and panic he suffered as a result of his abandonment. Despite the torment in his life, he never seemed depressed about it. Either he was incredibly optimistic about life, or he was one of the best actors I've ever seen. Either way, I was willing to take a shot. I asked him if he liked my number. It turned out that he had some bad meanings of this particular convention himself, and wanted to take off to do something more fun. He tossed me an invite, and seeing as I was alone a 32-year-old woman, he didn't have to ask twice. I never understood why he saw me over all the other girls. I was beaten and broken, with no aspirations to better my current situation. Maybe he understood how I felt, considering all the pain he went through himself, and decided to get to know who I really was under this cocoon of emotionless insecurity. I sensed a thread of compassion entwined between all that stress and trauma, willing to lend an ear to anyone that felt the same pain as him. I was truly transfixed by his presence, drawn to his character. I had never felt like this before. We decided to go to a pool hall. Apparently he used to be a regular at another pool hall by his old house, winning local tournaments and making a name for himself, and he wanted to check out the scenery here. I wasn't too shabby at the game table myself, so I was excited. Every shot I made was perfect. The balls just sank into the pockets like each puck was a black hole, just waiting for something to trespass into its field. On the 17th game we played, I think I made about 23 shots. He just kept running the table. It was funny, because he kept apologizing for being so good. I waited for the apology and complimented him on his skill, causing him to chuckle more. Every time he laughed, I just fell harder and harder in love. We left after that. He said that he had to get home because he had some errands to run. Being new in the neighborhood and all, I agreed, so we exchanged numbers and parted ways. Weeks and months passed. We continued to talk and eventually began regularly dating. The relationship was moving pretty quickly, and seemed we were more truly matched for each other. After about 7 months of dating, he asked to marry me. He popped the question on the 17th, as that's how many games we played on our first date. I found that so romantic and flew into his arms, screaming yes to the skies. Things were finally looking up. I moved out of my shitbox apartment into his home. I always admired the cozy feel of his 2-bedroom ranch house. Something perfect to start a family in. As I was moving my final things, I noticed how much of a mess I was making, with my boxes and stuff and all. I apologized and motioned to the basement to finish moving my things. His face instantly darted to mine. In a hurried and almost frantic voice, he assured me that he'd take care of the rest of my things and that I should relax. It was a bit odd, sure, but he had been through so much excruciating sadness throughout his life that him having a psychiatric illness is something I expected. I complied to her request. The next few months were great. We never got tired of each other, and on our wedding day, the kiss we shared at the altar was so special that I firmly believed the angels surrounded us and surrounded us with harps and trumpets as our lips connected and sparked so brightly that the entire room was illuminated. He was always leery of me approaching the unforbidden basement, sometimes to the point of arguing with me about it. But aside from that, I didn't see any fault in him, until everything I knew about life was shattered. One day, he told me he'd be going to the grocery store. I know that I wanted some ground beef in order to make hamburgers for dinner. He smiled at me with that cute, adorable smile. I had grown to know and love and headed out. After climbing Burger King's corporation ladder, I had finally attained the position of regional financial manager for the entire state. I was working on some budget information, assessing the cost of all franchises across the state. It was a long and endurous process, but I was getting just about 6 figures of it, so I wasn't complaining. After each report was fully completed and evaluated, I moved the files to a USB drive so I could upload them to the computer for corporation meeting and the next day. To my horror, with only 3 reports left to finish, the computer crashed. If I didn't finish these reports, I would surely lose my job. I called my husband, asking him if he had another computer or something I could use, but he didn't answer. I rummaged through the house to find something to finish these reports with to no avail. Desperate times call for desperate measures, so I took the daring risk of approaching the basement. The handle was unusually cold and the door was locked. Frustrated and defeated, I slumped to the couch in depression. That is, until I realized that there was a special flower pot that my husband always guarded with his life. On a hunch, I went to it and found the key at the bottom of the pot, under the dirt. As soon as I opened the door, a rancid odor attacked me like a fallen wall from a decrepit building. The entire basement looked as if it was wasting away, a clear contrast to the rest of the house. The heavy layers of dust upon every surface suggested that the basement had been accessed in years. Using my cell phone as a flashlight, I guided myself down to the stairs to flicker a light switch. Surprisingly, the bulb still worked. The walls looked molded, the wood was breaking down, the stench was horrible, and the entire place was in disarray. I encountered a strong sense of dysphoria after setting foot in the room, so I quickly searched for some old computer with the intent of running upstairs as quickly as possible. To my luck and astonishment, there was an old laptop and charger in the corner, hidden under some boxes and books. Oddly enough, one of the boxes was one in which she brought down after I had first moved in. I had not seen some of this stuff in a long time. Ignoring the nostalgia, I seized the computer and charger and raced up to the master bedroom. After giving the laptop a few minutes of power, I booted it up. It ran on Windows XP and was quite the technological dinosaur compared to the modern equipment. But it had Microsoft Office, so it was acceptable. As soon as Windows finished booting up, a system message appeared on the screen, notifying me that new sources had been added to the tagged video cache, and if I'd like to check it. I had never seen a system message like this before. I know that snooping is generally taboo, but curiosity overcame me. I was taken to a hidden file that required a password to access it. Rolling my eyes, I moved my cursor to X out of the program, with suddenly something typed the password in for me. A bit frightened at this point, I was sucked into the screen. There were 4 videos entitled him.avi, 1.avi, 2.avi, and y.avi. All 4 thumbnails were pure black. Curious, I clicked on the file entitled him.avi. I should have never done that. The video was extremely shaky and grainy. I could barely make out the figures of a woman tied to a chair with some sort of metallic rope. A man, moving as if he was floating on air, not moving a single bone in his body, but yet being able to slowly hover around the room, came into the picture. To my horror, he brought out a knife and started slowly cutting the woman. The woman screamed in brutal pain as the man slowly cut him to pieces. Blood poured from her mouth and all the other holes in his body as the man dug the knife deeper in. Her clothes were slowly stripped from her body, and after each article was removed, he used a lighter to set all the newly exposed hairs on fire. Covered in horrific burns and terrifying cuts, the woman had stopped screaming and was now simply bawling. She occasionally screamed out, "Why?" but that was all she could mutter. Each time she did, the man stabbed her again. He began laughing as the woman began vomiting blood. He picked up a small, solid piece of the vomit with the knife and slowly licked the knife clean, chuckling like a high schooler. He then proceeded to gouge the woman's left eye out when she was still alive. I couldn't watch any more, so I closed the video.